Jamie Lovett with Comicbook.com.
Hey, Jamie.
Hi, how are you?
Just great.
Excellent. So Star Wars The Bad Batch coming to an end with season three, which is
Yeah.
its own ending. But as I was watching the episodes we got sent, I was thinking this really feels like an end to the whole clone trooper saga that began with like the Clone Wars in 2008, which you were there for. So I'm wondering,
Yeah.
for you, does this feel like a an ending to that thing you started, in 2008 or so?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right that in a sense, this really is an end of an era. This is the because the clones in the Bad Batch was like the final element of the Clone Wars that George Lucas had his fingerprints on. This was his idea, and to initially start and give them a little arc and give it a try, and everybody said, "Yep, we like it," including George. And then they went back in to do that. But so yeah, so they finished the Clone Wars, and this is kind of the final escape pod that made it out of that series is the Bad Batch, and they're bringing it in for a landing in spectacular Star Wars fashion that I really know that the fans are going to love. It's such great Star Wars, and I think I can't wait for people to see it.
Uh, kind of jumping off of that, which is a thing I hadn't considered. It is amazing that this is like the last thing George
It
Lucas
is.
touched.
It is.
Um, there's, without spoiling anything, the way the Bad Batch ends up. I've seen the first eight, and it's alluding to connections to some really big things from the wider Star Wars story.
Mhm.
Um, as a fan and as someone who's been involved with this franchise for as long as you have, were you surprised to see how it interweaves, or for you, is that just kind of what Star Wars does?
Well, it's I think the Bad Batch had, for my money, personally, one of the best openings of any Star Wars anything, where they open right up in the middle of Order 66, which is a brilliant, really charged, emotional, grand but personal moment in the whole Star Wars mythology. So it right away, this is broadly connected to these guys who are really not connected to it. They're on their own. They're doing their own thing, and sort of skipping along as an independent entity. But very quickly they get drawn in both to the family aspect of taking on this young kid Omega, but also gradually as they see the results of what's happening with this grand transformation, is that they have to become involved. They have to step up, and they do in grand fashion, as you will see. So it's always felt to me a part of the larger mythology, and but what was so brilliant in its effectiveness is that you're connected to the personal stories of these guys and of Omega in particular, and that there's a personal involvement with something. It's not just a large military or economic planetary battle that's playing out, but this is a very personal story with real personal stakes that are very high and very compelling.
I'm curious, as both a fan and as someone who has been involved as long as you have, you've done these voices. They came with you for fun, and it was like, hey, how would you like a cameo in a live action thing? Do you have a cameo like role in mind that you think would be fun? Would you want to be in one of the helmets, or do you have a different idea?
That's that's a fun idea. I think if I were offered a Star Wars cameo, if Dave Filoni or John Favreau or someone gave me a call, come on down to Culver City, let's put you in a whatever costume. I think it might be non-human, and I might want it to be like, the tall Jawa, like the elf of Jawas. That would be me, because that was my first Star Wars gig, was being a Jawa. The year after Episode 4 came out, I had a Jawa costume my parents made for me. So I wouldn't mind being a Jawa. I don't need to be seen. My face doesn't need to be seen, but maybe just to be a Jawa.
That is not the answer I would have expected, but it is an excellent one. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah,
I
my
love the show,
pleasure.
and I can't wait to see the ending.
Oh, it's so good. So good.
Jamie Lovett with Comicbook.com.
Hey
Uh,
Jamie, nice to meet you.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good, excellent. I just want to start by generally asking, like, we're at presumably the end of Omega's story. At least, I haven't seen the last episode, so I don't know the end of this part of her story anyway. You never know with Star Wars. But what was your feeling when you saw like, oh, this is the end of the Bad Batch. This is where we end up. I've completed this arc. How did it hit you when you saw how this concludes?
Oh, I mean, listen, it was really bittersweet. I have been grateful for every step of this journey. Nothing is ever sort of taken for granted, at least from my experience. And I had hoped that there was a long storyline potential for this to continue for a long time. But I also feel like our creators have done a beautiful service to these characters that they've brought into this series, and that this is a nice place to end it. Um, yeah, without giving away too many spoilers, I think people who followed along will feel like it's a satisfying end. But yeah, I could have continued. I could have done more.
Like I said, it's Star Wars. You never know.
Yeah, thanks.
Were you at all, surprised? I talked to, Brad and the showrunners, and they were talking about how, the ending is pretty close to where they intended it at the beginning, but some things did change. Were you at all surprised by where the character and how things ended?
I mean, no, I think Jen and Brad are right. There is a trajectory that was sort of like set up in the dynamic of these soldiers being thrust into becoming, for one of big brothers, even though they're younger brothers, but like sort of becoming caretakers of this young child and then forcing them to imagine their own autonomous future outside of being, owned by anyone else. And I guess if that's sort of like the preliminary setup, then yeah, where we end up in season three kind of is a full circle in answering that question for themselves.
I wanted to ask you about the first episode of this season because it's really really different in tone from the rest of the series. It's not that usual like high adventure thing that the show and Star Wars is known for. It's really like kind of somber. How did that episode strike you? Did you approach it any differently, from the other episodes, or was it just, not to say business as usual, but business as usual for you?
No, I mean, whenever I get a script, that it becomes my sort of manuscript, my touchstone. Like I never, it doesn't work well for me to look too far forward or like too reflective. I have to know where I've come from emotionally. But really, the scripts are so well done and so thoughtful that that becomes what I lean on for performance. But I think I was relieved that we were starting that way because season two ended so intensely. I think it would have been horrible to just have launched into some sort of like business as usual mission in season three. And I will say I had a lot of fun because I feel like season three is a lot darker. It's more dangerous. It's There's a quality to it that feels more thriller-esque. Um, yeah, still exciting, but there's a lot more tension because I guess in honesty, the stakes are higher.
Yeah, like conspiracy thriller is something that came to mind while I was watching some of the preview episodes. So yeah, I definitely got that.
Yeah,
Um,
and like it's like there are like, there's like medical testing on living beings happening. It's dark. Yeah, it's dark. But maybe that's also clever for the creators because for some of the younger, like Bad Batch is accessible for all kinds of people, and that's I think the cool thing about it. But for some of the people who chose to bring in younger viewers or younger family members to watch it from season one, perhaps 3 years in, they're now ready to have this sort of content. So yeah, maybe that's why too. But it did the different flavor. I'm so glad that you picked up on it because I definitely picked up on it as a performer, and it took us to different places.
yeah, I think I have time to squeeze in one more quick question. Just real simple. Looking back now, assuming it's not something that will spoil an upcoming episode, is there any episode, line, scene, anything that stands out as like that was a highlight of my time on this show?
Oh man, that is such a that's such a hard question. I'm not very good at remembering lines like that, but like anytime Omega like basically reminds everyone that the clones are our brothers, like this sort of this epic camaraderie that extends past people that she hasn't even met yet, like this feeling of absolute connectedness to people and this desire to protect and look after them. Sorry, I can't give you a soundbite, but that sort of intention just feels so important and epic and so much of who Omega is.
How's it going?
Nice.
Hi. So we're talking about Star Wars: The Bad Batch, the final season, the third season. My first question is just, I know it's been three seasons. This is the end. How closely does the ending we're getting resemble where you imagine you'd end up when it was time to wrap up the story you started with season one?
There's definitely some similarities, but also some differences. It's been a number of years. So uh, again, we always dreamed that we could do this in three seasons, and the fact that we were able to have that opportunity, we owe a lot of thanks to Lucasfilm and Disney Plus for giving us that time. And the fact that we knew in season two that season three was going to be the last one, we got to end it the way that we felt was fitting, and we're very thankful.
Um, so I was gonna save this question for later, but I'm excited about it, so I'm gonna bring it now. I audibly
No.
gasped when I saw Ventress in the trailer because I had read Dark Disciple, so I was like, wait a second now. Can you tell me about where the idea to bring her into season three came from? Did it start as we really want to do something with Ventress, or did it start as we need a character to fill this role and Ventress would be good for it?
Well, without spoiling too much about it, it we have a storyline that required someone, and she was the best fit for what we needed. But again, Brad and I don't just make these decisions; it's very much a conversation. And when Ventress was put on the table, we were very excited about it because we were both fans of that character, and we wanted to honor what her character was in Clone Wars while also not while also honoring Dark Disciple.
Can you talk at all about, I know you don't want to spoil anything about, how her appearance might like interact, address, acknowledge Dark Disciple? Because I know there have been some instances where we've seen like the animated shows kind of adapting slash remixing things from books. Is a situation like that, or is it a little more distant than like what we saw with Kanan in the first episode of the show?
Yeah, no, we could talk about it. Because off of Jen, what you're saying, once we knew we can use this character that we love so much, we immediately were doing lots and lots of research. We had lots of questions ourselves. We went back to unfinished arcs from the Clone Wars that were actually the inspiration for the novel Dark Disciple. And there were designs created, including her hairdo, which is so cool, and her lightsaber, the color of the lightsaber. That was all designed for that. So we honored that for when she shows up in our storyline. We can't go into all of the details, but we can say that the answers to your questions, and we know a lot of fans are asking questions, will be answered. They may not all be answered in the Bad Batch, but rest assured, the connections are all there and they will be told. So just hang tight.
I think I have time for one more question. I'm going to leave you with a big one because both of you guys have been involved with Star Wars animation, even outside of Bad Batch. And currently, there are two very cool, like anthology things with Visions and Tales of the Jedi. But right now, no announced like series like the Bad Batch. Can you, be it speculative or whatever, say what your hopes, wishes, thoughts about the future of Star Wars animation are?
Obviously, we can't really speak as to if there's something in the works or not, but I will just say that the team at Lucasfilm Animation, it's been a pleasure working with them because they are so fantastic at what they do and have such passion for what they do. And anything that, if there is stuff in the future, I'm going to watch and be a fan because I love all the things that they do.
Sign me up. I want to watch more.